Welcome to podcast number 7 of our AI-generated news summary. Let's dive into the summaries of our top stories. Our next story is titled, Hungary's Orban blasts Zelensky's more than frightening victory plan. Viktor Orban's office has issued a strong negative response to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's victory plan. The plan, if implemented, would be the shortest path to World War III. A statement by the Hungarian Prime Minister's office said, Orban, we are losing this war. So the strategy is not working. But this does not mean that we need more war. More dangerous and long-range weapons. Orban pledged that he will lobby German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron to start negotiations with Moscow. Hungary's Prime Minister Krzysztof Bobrovnitsky has called for an end to the Ukraine conflict. He has expressed the desire for a ceasefire in the southern Russian oblast. It has been reported that Orban has also called for the end of the conflict in the east of the country, in the region known as the Donetsk and Lugansk region. It was also reported that the Hungarian PM has also said that he wants to end the war in Syria. Our next story is titled, This is Illegal. British Labour Party sending staff to campaign for Kamala in swing states. Sophia Patel, head of operations, announced plan in a LinkedIn post. She has 10 spots left with free accommodation for any rabid British TDS sufferers. Patel has since deleted the post as it became apparent what was going on. Ex-owner Elon Musk chimed in to note that the Patel's proposed plan is simply illegal. This is definitely one of the stupidest political cell phones ever. How can anybody think that door-to-door campaigners with foreign accents are anything but a way for the Harris campaign to shoot itself in the foot? This will convince voters that Harris isn't part of a globalist cabal. UK fought a whole war so you guys could piss off out of our politics. Morgan Ortagus. At Morgan Ortagus, October 17, 2024. Perhaps Labour should be concentrating more on the crippling crisis in the British National Health Service. The Tories are currently leading the polls in the race to become the next Prime Minister of the UK. Our next story is titled, Trump brutally roasts Dems. Schumer shocked. Kamala, no show, at Al Smith dinner. The Al Smith dinner in New York City hosted President Trump Thursday night, seating him right next to Chuck Schumer. Pretty quickly Schumer looked like he didn't want to be there. Kamala Harris sent a pre-recorded mega cringe message that went over like a fart in church. Comedian Jim Gaffigan made fun of her after the crowd gave a dismal applause. Host said the Democrats staged a coup and ousted their democratically elected incumbent, Kamala Harris. The look of defeat is the look of a soon-to-be Senate Minority Leader. President Trump was roasted at the Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner. The event was held at the New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art and was hosted by New York Mayor Bill de Blasio and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. The dinner was held to raise money for the National Institute of Health and Human Services, NIH, which provides healthcare services to low-income children and the elderly. The annual dinner is one of the biggest fundraisers for the NIH. Our next story is titled, Endgame. US ends fiscal 2024 paying a record $1.1 trillion in interest expense. The U.S. budget deficit was supposed to gradually normalize. After 2 crisis years, the U.S. was meant to end its drunken sailor spending ways. For a while there, it seemed touch and go. Our next story is titled, Goldman downgrades Europe to way below consensus. European equities remain on the back foot as some very high-profile earnings misses took a clear toll on the market. Goldman added insult to injury by downgrading European earnings forecasts to way below consensus. Our next story is titled, Turkey seeks record defense budget. Readying for regional war. Turkey aims to spend 913.9 billion Turkish lira $26.8 billion. For defense spending, 2024 defense and security budget was around $40 billion, meaning 2025's defense spending will see a 17.5% increase. Government earlier this month put forward a new tax venue to inject more cash into the defense industry support fund. Turkish Treasury and Finance Minister Mehmet Şimşek earlier this week said the government had ordered the defense industry to focus on building a steel dome. These are expensive systems in terms of advanced technology, he said. Turkey has been making large investments in the local arms industry. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan says Turkey has to ready itself for an Israel-Iran war. Ankara is currently exploring other means to satisfy the expenditure. The Turkish government has not commented on the report. The report was published by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, in association with the International Institute of Strategic Studies, IISS, in Washington, D.C. Our next story is titled, Russia Poised to Cripple Ukraine Steel Industry by Seizing Vital Coal Mine. The mine is Ukraine's largest for producing coking coal, a specific grade used to fuel blast furnaces. Steel is one of Ukraine's principal industries, accounting for about a third of exports before Russia's invasion. Ukraine ranked 14th in global steel production. By last year, it had fallen to 24th place. This year, Metinvest expected to unearth 5.3 million metric tons of coal in the mine. The pending loss of this vital industrial asset will only accelerate growing Western resignation to a negotiated end to the bloody, U.S.-led proxy war with Russia, writes CNN's John Sutter. The U.S.-led war in Ukraine has killed more than 10,000 people, including more than 3,000 Russian soldiers. According to a UN report released last week, the United Nations has called for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine by the end of the year. But Russia says it will not accept a ceasefire without a Russian withdrawal from Crimea. Our next story is titled, Silver's Explosive Breakout. Silver is putting in a massive up candle, taking out big resistance levels as of writing. This is a massive breakout to the upside. Our next story is titled, America's national security is far worse off than 4 years ago. 4 years ago, there was stability in Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific. Now Europe's long peace, that is, no major war in Europe since 1945, has been shattered. The Middle East is roiling with conflict due to Hamas. The Biden-Harris administration failed to deter the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Only a Trump presidency will end failed policies of neo-engagement and return the U.S. to the Reagan-esque certainty of the previous Cold War, writes Andrew Kuchins, a former State Department official who served in the George W. Bush administration and the State Department from 2003 to 2007. The Engagement School contends the Sino-American relationship should be cooperative. In essence, the engagers are appeasers, he writes, and their arguments are ubiquitous and dominate UN foreign policy toward the PRC. The failed Biden-Harris neo-engagement policies have allowed the CCP to escape the costs of its many decades of misrule, he says. Our next story is titled, Forget About the Roaring Twenties. Goldman Sachs is not a buyer of the Roaring Twenties thesis in terms of long-term equity return forecasts. We estimate the S&P 500 will deliver an annualized nominal total return of 3% during the next 10 years. That concludes our AI-generated news summary for today. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.